Hey everybody, it's Tristan. This is Step Back. I'm wearing my AOC t-shirt, and that says a lot about what we're going to talk about today. We're not talking about AOC though. Why would I even bother teasing anything if the title just gives it away anyway? And oh god, it's snowing again. Today we're going to talk about Ilhan Omar and her confrontation with the powerful Israeli lobby AIPAC. First, let's talk a little bit about Ilhan Omar. She is a congresswoman who recently got elected in the 2018 election, one of the first two Muslim women to ever be elected in American history, and bucking a lot of trends in the Washington consensus is a critic of the State of Israel and also a supporter of boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, or the BDS movement. Maybe it should be a video all on its own because it has some great overtones to the movement to stop apartheid in South Africa, but basically it is a movement to stop the horrible things that are going on in Israel by essentially boycotting Israeli goods, divesting from their companies, and putting sanctions on their economic output. Basically, economic pressure. The thing that came up recently is that when Glenn Greenwald posted a story about how the GOP leader, Kevin McCarthy, was going to punish her, she said, well, it's all about the Benjamins, and pointed to AIPAC, basically saying that yeah, a lot of politicians are bought off by the powerful Israeli lobby AIPAC. Now, I will say that she did understandably cross a line by playing into sort of stereotypes about Jews and money, but she quickly walked that back and apologized, and I don't think that it was intentional. However, the big thing that came out of this is that the Republican machine got mad and the Democrats responded very predictably. First of all, this isn't even controversial, the thing she said. AIPAC has literally bragged. It's literally on their website, and on several occasions the president of AIPAC has bragged, there's really no other way to say it, about how influential they are over American politicians. For example, the president, Steve Rosen, in 2005, in an interview with The New Yorker, held up a napkin and said, if I wanted to, I could get 70 senators to sign this napkin. And when Bill Clinton was going into office and choosing his cabinet, David Sterner, another president of AIPAC at the time, was basically saying how much influence they had and how it was basically going to be their call about who was in the cabinet to make sure that every single member of the cabinet was extremely pro-Israeli. Now, AIPAC, despite the acronym, is not actually a PAC in the sense of like a political action committee. I should probably talk about those too, because I learned in my stream last night that there's a lot of misconceptions about what those are, and is more a lobbyist group that, with its endorsements, can funnel a lot of money. If somebody comes out as too against Israel, AIPAC will denounce them, and a lot of other pro-Israel and Jewish groups that are PACs or do have control over significant donor bases will be able to fund those people and make sure that a pro-Israel political class dominates in Washington. And it's pretty useful. Israel enjoys a lot of protection from the United States as a UN Security Council permanent member. They can basically boycott any sanctions put in place by the United Nations, and there have been many, many attempts, in order to continue their process of systematically eliminating Palestinian people from existence. Anyways, quickly after Ilhan Omar put out those two tweets, she quickly met the face of the GOP machine. Kevin McCarthy is basically the replacement in the GOP for Paul Ryan, and this is his first real big thing to try and manufacture a controversy with the Democrats. So they tried to basically imply that Ilhan Omar was anti-Semitic because she didn't uncritically endorse the State of Israel in all of its actions, no matter how brutal, violent, or genocidal, and the Democrats caved. The entire Democratic Party leadership wrote a scathing letter against Ilhan Omar and basically said that they are in full support of Israel and they have not a single desire to back up or defend Ilhan Omar for her comments, including Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, who basically backstabbed a member of her own party. Great job, Nancy. There's no way to not discuss the racism of this. Ilhan Omar is now the second Muslim American member of Congress to get attacked for anti-Semitism for being critical of Israel. When there are only 3 Muslims who've ever been elected in American history, that is It's not good. I think that people might try to twist that to be an attack on Muslims. No, it is an attack on the fact that anytime a Muslim becomes a lawmaker, there is definitely a campaign to try and take them down. Now, this isn't the first time that the Democrats have caved to a right-wing attempt to manufacture a controversy in order to advance their agenda. There was a late-term abortion problem that came up with Governor Northam in Virginia, the same one that I basically talked smack about last week because he wore blackface, and don't worry, I have not forgiven him for that. But there was basically doctored footage to say that he supported extreme late-term abortion, even a new made-up word, post-birth abortion, which is not a thing. But it was, of course, to manufacture outrage against Northam and to try and hurt a, let's be honest, pretty vulnerable Democratic seat in the governorship of Virginia. Elizabeth Warren recently declared that she's running for president, and because of the right-wing machine, all of the news could basically only talk about the fact that she claimed Native American heritage, something that she has basically walked back and has apologized profusely for. But yet that's all they can talk about. Nothing about policy, nothing about ideas. And so that's going to tarnish her entire run, isn't it? To the point where even Republicans were making jokes about the Trail of Tears, which, making a joke about a huge crime against humanity that occurred to the indigenous people of America, not good form, Republicans, not good form. And I mean, there's also the big one that would be the entire Obama administration was basically dictated by Republicans manufacturing outrage, and Obama, being the strong leader that he was, instantly caving to everything that they wanted. This is why the American Health Care Act sucked. This is why every week there was some other thing that Obama is a this and Obama is a that. Then Obama would cave and do whatever the right-wing people wanted them to do, and then they would just keep saying bad things about him anyway. And I said this comes from the right precisely because this doesn't just come from the Republicans. And now we're going to have to talk about the 2016 election. More specifically, the 2016 primaries on the Democratic side. The Hillary Clinton machine was very effective at trying to make out Bernie Sanders, somebody who was arrested during the civil rights movement and someone who had Black Lives Matter activists on his staff, was racist compared to a candidate who, when she was alive during the civil rights movement, campaigned for Barry Goldwater, who was basically going to take a blind eye to segregation in the South, and in the 1990s, not long ago, within my living memory, referred to black youths as quote-unquote super predators. Yet, through money, through the system that they had, they were able to convince that somehow it was the person arrested during the civil rights movement who was the racist. There was also a widespread report that there was sexual harassment in the Bernie Sanders campaign, something that Bernie Sanders then responded to by having some of the strongest sexual harassment policies of any politician in America, and apologizing, taking personal responsibility for it in a public address, which is very different from the Hillary Clinton campaign that also had sexual harassment, but it was done by Hillary Clinton's spiritual advisor who, instead of being fired or reprimanded or doing anything, the Clinton office just sort of shuffled him around like he was some sort of Catholic priest. What I'm trying to say is that this is all examples of what I would call political gaslighting. Gaslighting being a term where people will intentionally do or say false things to convince you that you are somehow not in a sane mental state. It comes from a movie in which somebody turned on gaslights but denied that they were on in order to convince a woman that she was going insane. And when the Republicans just keep saying, Ilhan Omar, anti-Semitic, what are the Democrats going to do? Ilhan Omar, anti-Semitic, what are the Democrats going to do? You just keep saying that over and over again on the news, and you will gaslight people into thinking, hey, I'm not going to look at this critically. I'm going to pressure the Democrats to do it. And then the Democrats, being Democrats, caved instantly and basically turned their backs on one of the brightest rising stars in their own party. And the reason why the truth is being obscured in this case is not because of Bernie Sanders' secret sexism or Ilhan Omar being secretly an anti-Semitic monster. It's a fairly common political tactic that is being weaponized by both parties in order to destroy a insurgent left-wing movement within the Democratic Party, something that Ilhan Omar is very much a part of. What I'm saying is, don't let powerful people gaslight you. When a politician that you like the positions of has some sort of controversy that comes out of nowhere about them, do research. Look up what they're talking about and how they are interpreting it. Keep in mind that actions speak louder than words. If they accuse somebody of something, you should probably look up what they say these people are actually doing and find out if this person, through their actions, through their policies, through stump speeches, through anything like that, that is what is the source of the issue. We also have to be aware of overpaid TV journalists and how they have something like class privilege and how they do not see the perspectives of poor people and working class people in any meaningful way. And they also live through something called access journalism, where they don't want to anger any powerful politician in fear that they will lose the ability to get interviews or to get news tips or to get leaks and things like that. So you have to remember that they will cave to an establishment idea of trying to destroy an insurgent left-wing movement because they do not want to offend the politicians that they're supposed to be holding to account in order to basically not lose their access. So when an accusation comes out about a politician, you need to do research. It's sad because it's way easier to accuse somebody of something with no evidence or specious reasoning, and much harder to do the actual research and find out for yourself. But there are ways to do it, and there are ways to do it without falling down the sort of path that sometimes people who try to learn things on their own go down and become like conspiracy theorists and stuff. One thing I would suggest is following up with the Crash Course digital reality series that's going on right now. I'm going to put a link to it in the cards and in the description. But basically, it's a current Crash Course series about how to determine truth from fiction in our modern internet climate, or at least attempt to. Also, when these controversies sort of come out of nowhere, you should probably think about the book Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, maybe even read it if you can get your hands on it, and show how powerful media entities essentially can use the pulpit they have, the audience they have, the platform that we all know is extremely powerful. Keep in mind, legacy media people still have a way larger platform than anybody on like political YouTube can even hope to muster, and realize that they can change the narrative and they can change a lot of people's positions and ideas based on the way that they speak and the language they use. I want to give you guys a little bit of a hopeful message and say, actually, we got this. The reason why they're resorting to these dirty tactics is because they're scared. They're scared that there's a movement that wants to perpetuate actual fundamental systemic change in a country that is extremely unjust and cruel to a lot of people. It's finally time for their reckoning, and that terrifies them. So trust your instincts. Do your own research. Use good sources, and don't let overpaid, powerful people dictate what is or is not a controversy.